Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Five Vragen, or Five Questions, as we would say in English. This is our podcast featuring the people of the Netherlands' diplomatic network here in the U.S. Or, I should say, that's who we usually talk with, but we're changing it up again this week. Instead of asking one person 5 questions, which, let's be honest, usually runs a few more than 5, I'm asking several people a few questions. But these aren't just random people I stumbled across on my way into work. These people participated in the 3rd edition of Urban Dialogues in San Diego on Leap Day, February 29th, 2024. And what exactly are Urban Dialogues? Well, that's when we bring together Dutch and American experts to talk about the challenges facing our urban communities. The 3rd edition of the Dialogues focused on 2 cities, San Diego and Tijuana, Mexico. So we even had some Mexican experts participate. Even though these 2 cities are in separate countries, they are only about 20 miles apart from one another. My commute to work is farther than that. I'm Jeff Alenak from the Embassy's Communications Office, and I recorded most of these conversations from the deck of the Maritime Museum of San Diego. I say most because, well, I'll get to that in a moment. But first, let's hear what Diana Cervera from World Design Capital had to say about the Urban Dialogues. Thank you for joining me today, Diana.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Diana, let's jump right into it. What's your expertise and what brings you to Urban Dialogues in San Diego-Tijuana?
Yeah, so I'm actually the Community Program Manager with World Design Capital San Diego-Tijuana 2024. So my role within the organization is to help manage the 300 plus initiatives that were submitted through our portal, calling for community participation from both sides of the border. So my role throughout the year is to support them as they activate and we can illuminate the amazing work that they're doing.
And what is World Design Capital?
So the World Design Capital is a year-long program that seeks to center design in the way that it can connect us, empower us, and really change the way that we connect to one another, the way that we navigate our reality and the complexity of also living in a region that's cross-border. So the World Design Capital hopes to center design and really activate design and deepen our understanding of it throughout the whole year.
So was there a conference here recently? Is that what we're talking about? A conference that?
No, so the World Design Capital is a designation that a city in the world receives every 2 years through the World Design Organization.
So which city received it? San Diego, Tijuana, or both?
So actually this is the first time a region, so San Diego and Tijuana, was selected as a region.
A region.
To be designated as the World Design Capital. So technically it's 2 cities.
In 2 countries?
In 2 countries.
On one continent?
On one continent, segmented by a border.
Is there a lot of flow between the 2 cities?
So the border crossing here at San Isidro, which is the point of entry between San Diego and Tijuana, is the most trafficked in the world. It's the most crossed. I think there's over 100,000 daily crossings.
100,000? That sounds like a lot. I'm from the D.C. area, so we don't have a lot of crossings, international crossings near us. I crossed into D.C. from Maryland. That's about it. So is that a lot of businesses going back and forth then? Tourists?
So it's probably a little bit of everything, but there is something that's called the trans-border community. It's often an invisible or overlooked kind of population that exists here in the region. So trans-border meaning folks that live and work or cross every day from Tijuana to San Diego, or I can actually probably go the other way around, but it's typically the crossings from Tijuana to San Diego.
So somebody could live in Tijuana and work in San Diego, or vice versa?
Yeah, I do that. I do that all the time.
So you live in Tijuana?
So I live in Tijuana.
I had no idea. I'm not going to ask you which one you like better. I wouldn't put you through that. So don't worry about that. What did you find most interesting about today's session?
So today was really illuminating for me. I mean, I'm not an expert in the fields that were presented, so I'm really here representing the World Design Capital organization, but I think it's always interesting to hear the perspectives of folks who do the implementing of things like policies or urban planning and design, and to really think about how that happens across borders. Mm-hmm. So I think something that was really striking to me was that maybe for the first time some of these folks were sitting together. I think there are definitely committees and boards that kind of talk about cross-border collaboration and cross-border solutions. Mm-hmm. But it was just interesting to witness and hear both the excitement to connect and to create those solutions, and then also maybe some of the frustrations that exist in the complexity of a place like a border region.
Does the border present unique challenges when we're talking about regions working together?
Definitely. I think that the border is what one scholar named Norma Iglesias Prieto would call as a magnifying glass for like all the kind of geopolitical conflicts kind of manifest here at the border. They're like,
I'm sorry, was that somebody's name? Can you say
yeah,
that again?
Norma Iglesias Prieto. She's one of the leading scholars here in the region on like border art and border practices, and she kind of thinks about the border as a place of great complexity, contradiction, but also a place that manifests an immense amount of creativity.
Okay.
And I think we saw a little bit of that here today with folks thinking about, well, how do we design housing that can be more affordable, more sustainable, more connected? And I was in a place like thinking about a solution that might work for San Diego may not work for Tijuana, right? So there's a different cultural condition on each side of the border, but thinking about a place as a region means that despite the border, how do we work together?
Are there big cultural differences between the two? I mean, they're only 20 miles apart, but there is an international border between them at the same time.
Exactly, yeah. So I think definitely once you cross the border, I feel like I'm entering another portal, right? I mean, my background is I'm first generation born in the U.S., so I grew up on this side, but I am Mexican.
But you moved to Tijuana.
And I moved to Tijuana, so I choose to live there. But there's thousands of folks that, they're born and raised there, but they are transborder. They cross the border for work. So it's kind of like having this duality always. So when you cross to San Diego, there's a different way that San Diego functions from the way that you drive the streets, from the foods that you can access, right? And then you cross into Tijuana, and it's kind of like another world, another portal that you enter and that you have to know how to navigate. So I think that even some of the topics presented here today spoke about that. Like, how do you kind of design policies, design housing, design streets, considering some of the things that are maybe super formal in San Diego, and kind of in Tijuana, there's economies that function fully informally. And so how do you kind of design for that? So it was just really interesting hearing the different experts from other countries kind of give their opinions or speculate on how they might do that.
What do you think we can learn from one another, San Diego, Tijuana,
well,
when it comes to urban design? So
again, I'm not an expert in that field,
okay,
but I would say I think something that I heard today. There was a comment from, I'm forgetting his name, but he was a professor from SETI's University, and he talked about on a street corner, there is a lot of informal economies, a lot of food-based. So in the morning, there'll be maybe like tamales and a certain type of tacos. And then at another time, the lunchtime, then a different food vendor comes to the same location. And then at dinner time, a different food vendor comes. So we think about informal economies as being kind of like unstructured, right? Kind of if we're looking at them through a lens of like professionalism or policy. But if I think a deeper look, kind of there's actually quite a lot of sophistication in informal economies that you will see very prevalent in Tijuana. There's folks that their entire life in terms of the way that they earn their income is based on informal economy. And so I think that a big thing with the World Design Capital is thinking about centering the folks that you're designing for. It's something I'm learning about. So it was interesting to think like, well, someone might look at that and say, oh, there's no structure there. There's no, it's just, vendors just everywhere. But within them, there is definitely a structure. There's a time slot. There's a positioning. There's a way that all has to function.
I would think the vendors know those rules inside and out. But,
exactly.
Maybe harder from the outside. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Well, that was Diana Cervera of World Design Capital, who, as you heard, lives in Tijuana and works in San Diego. Now let's tune in to my conversation with the Dutchman, TJ Haccou, who is from Space&Matter in Amsterdam. Thank you for joining me today, TJ.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's jump right into it. What's your expertise and what brings you to Urban Dialogues in San Diego, Tijuana?
Well, I have a design office, strategic and spatial design office called Space&Matter. We do a lot of neighborhood developments and designs based on community-oriented neighborhoods and circular neighborhoods. And since the Netherlands is a small country and we want to have a lot of impact, we think scaling up works better in the U.S.
Okay. What's your footprint in the U.S.?
We have a very small footprint because we did not yet start off, and that is we're trying. We're part of a cluster of companies focusing on circular neighborhood development, and we have we're in a program funded by the Dutch government to set up business development in California.
Okay.
So we're here now for 2 years in a row and trying to make relationships, find partners, to do what we want to do here. And
so what kind of partners are you looking for?
In my personal case, we are a design office, and we are not able to really do architectural design in California or in the US. So we are looking for maybe an architectural partner or real estate developers.
Is that a licensing issue?
Yeah,
like a state
definitely.
license.
Yeah.
Is it possible to get a state license, or
possibly if we get the right find the right people here that want to set up our branch, then it would be no problem. Yeah.
So you could, for example, hire an American who is licensed in California to work for your company.
That would be absolutely possible.
And that's the kind of partner that you're looking for.
Yeah.
And then once you can find that partner, then what's the next step? Then do you look for development companies to design neighborhoods?
So we are trying to find we already found some partners, mainly in Los Angeles, that are very open to our sort of circular way of design, and really think that could be the future for California, or at least LA too. So those would be potential partners to find the first sites, to make the first real estate developments, and help them out with that. So that would be either that is the first step, and then finding the partner, or we first find the partner, and then the commission or the
and
location.
These are we talking about planned neighborhoods that we're talking about, neighborhoods of 3,000 homes, for example?
No, not that size yet. I think it's always good, and the projects that we did in Amsterdam also start small, comprehensible, and that people understand it and see it and feel it, what circular economy could mean to them.
Okay.
And then we'd like to scale up slowly. So we could just start with a small scale project of a couple of homes.
I was just going to ask, what's your idea of small?
Small would be like, let's say 10.
10 homes.
But it's nice. You always need a bit of homes to really get the dynamics between people and going, right? So it cannot be just one house. That is too small.
No. And even I can see where 3,000 is too big. That's sort of. I live on the East Coast in Maryland. My neighborhood has about 3,000 homes. Yeah. And they've been building it for 20 years, and they're still building.
That is quite substantial.
Yeah. Well, it's funny where I come from. It's in Maryland. It's pretty normal. It's not even that big of a neighborhood.
But it's designed in one go.
It was designed at the start to say we're gonna put townhouses here, condos here, single family homes here, with this style of single family homes here and this style here. The school is going to be here, so it was master planned out. And then as the economy changes, as it does inevitably, they took a part of it that was, I hesitate to say the number of acres because I don't remember, but a commercial side. They said this is going to be offices, and after 2008, the economy crashed, and said, well, we can't build offices here. Let's turn it into homes.
You need to be a bit agile.
What's the lowest hanging fruit for sustainability that you see in the U.S.?
Solar. Well, I'm talking California.
Southern California would be solar.
You guys actually have a lot of sun here, so that is one. But what I also think is quite important, and maybe not low-hanging fruit, but very important, is that we also look at social sustainability, so that it's more equitable, the housing market. And
how do you do that?
Well, actually, it's all about ownership and financing structures, and that is what we are trying in the Netherlands as well. We are we call it housing cooperatives, where people are collective owners of the building they live in. So it's not individual ownership, but collective ownership.
It's a homeowners association, a condo association.
Sort of, but here it's the people living there. They form an entity, legal entity that gets a mortgage, and they are renting from or leasing from the entity.
So it could be like one mortgage on a multi-unit condo, for lack of a better word.
Like, let's say 40 units, and then
Okay.
the 40 people are sort of members of the entity. The entity has a loan. The people pay rent to the entity. The entity reimburses the loan.
Does that exist anywhere here in the States that you know of?
I'm not very sure.
Okay.
At least
I'm not sure either. I've never.
Super uncommon.
Super. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not sure. It might be, and it's hard to be an expert in all 50 states and what might exist in one city.
But I think there must be some of these sort of constructions around. I know that for a fact that Community Land Trust is also a model that is active in the like working in the U.S. and that is a similar sort of model. Yeah.
What's so you mentioned the solar is the lowest hanging fruit. I think a lot of people would agree with you.
Yeah.
What's the biggest hurdle then?
What I hear, always legislation. That is
Legislation, the government getting in the way, huh?
Yeah, the government made a lot of rules to protect I don't know what, but that is getting in the way. And what I think is needed is maybe some rule-free experiments to sort of show what is possible, to show that it is working in another way, and then see how we can fit new regulations into the future solution.
I tell you where I'm from, my neighborhood, I live in a homeowners association. They used to, many years ago, said you can't have solar. It's against the HOA rules.
Yeah.
And then the state of Maryland, where I come from, where I live, said, nah, you can't do that. You have to allow solar.
Yeah.
And now, once that passed, I see it all over the place.
Exactly.
But it still looks so expensive for a homeowner to say, yeah, I'm going to plop down 5 figures to and hope to recoup the cost in the next 20 years.
But
as a homeowner.
5 figures for solar.
Yeah.
That is not what it costs in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
So
And it may be different for
they're
states, but
golden solar.
well, some of them will say, well, you lease your roof to a solar company, so it's much less.
Yeah.
But even still, that gives, as a homeowner, that gives me pause that I give somebody else the right to my house, to my roof.
We usually in the Netherlands you just buy your own solar panels, which is I don't know, it's like 5-6K maybe, and battery. If you want a battery with that, then it's sort of 5-figure thing.
Okay.
But if not, then I just charge my car with it. Works as well.
And you don't have as much sun in California, you don't have as much sun in the Netherlands.
No.
As
we have a big dip in wintertime.
Yeah, big dip. Yeah.
But we can sell the energy to the energy corporations.
You could do that here too. Yeah. So, at least and when I say here, I mean in Maryland. Every state can do it a little bit different. I know if that's one of the big selling points of solar.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
they'll say, if you use less, then you sell it back to the company.
Yeah.
They might even give you a check.
Yeah, that's how it works in the Netherlands too. But we did projects like we met in Amsterdam a floating neighborhood with 500 solar panels.
Yeah,
it runs on a smart grid.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my partners lives there.
Okay.
And even with the super high increase of the energy prices during the war in Russia and Ukraine, they had a energy bill of €35, like $35 for the whole year.
For the electric, and is that everything? I mean, it's
everything.
not also gas, right?
It's a full electric development. There's no gas.
35, so $3 a month.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, because you did the investment up front.
That would probably persuade a lot of Americans to go solar if it got to that price. What did you find most interesting from today's sessions?
I think it's interesting or a bit shocking is that there is a conversation between Tijuana and San Diego. But what we visited Tijuana this morning, San Diego, multiple projects yesterday, and the difference of sort of a twin city that is so different. The both sides of the twin are so different from each other. That is interesting.
Is it the states then that make it different? Obviously, there's a national border between the two.
It is actually the issue here in the States is that we cannot find the rule-free zones to test. And in Tijuana, it's the issue that there is everyone is just doing whatever he wants. So I said you should sort of learn from Tijuana, or you should get the zone there, test, and then if it's right, you implement it in the U.S. Because there's your rule-free zone.
Rule-free zone, is that what you're talking about? Not roof-free. Rule-free zone.
Rule-free zone.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's rules for everything in the States here when it comes to definitely when it comes to building the code.
Yeah, and also in different silos. So that makes a bit of a problem and a very long haul.
Yeah. Did you see opportunities for collaboration outside of that? Is there another example of collaboration that?
Oh, definitely. We have, mainly in Los Angeles. I already told you, but there we also see some community led initiatives.
Okay.
We have been talking to the Livable Communities Initiative, who are looking at the transit axis and the sort of single story commercial buildings next to it, and they say, why not add 3-4 layers of housing on top? So we create these sort of 15-minute cities with a lot more dynamic life in it, less cars, more biking. And they have their references are from Amsterdam, the reference images. So I think there's a good potential to collaborate as well.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining me today, TJ, and best of luck to you in your efforts to find American partners to continue building the relationship between our two nations.
Thank you, Jeff.
Well, thank you, TJ, and I certainly hope you do find an American partner to expand your footprint here in the United States. Now let's take it back to North America and hear what Dr. Dinorah Gonzalez from the Institute of Sustainable Mobility in Baja, California has to say about the Urban Dialogues. Thank you for joining me today, Dinorah.
Thank you for inviting me.
What's your expertise and what brings you to Urban Dialogues San Diego-Tijuana?
Well, my expertise is a buildup of different disciplines. I was, by formation, I'm an architect, and I got my master's in urban planning. And through many years, I worked as an urban planner in my city of Tijuana. After that, I also got a PhD in social sciences, specializing in housing and housing in Mexico. And so I have this dual background that I am a researcher right now at El Colegio de la Frontera Norte, but I am also an advisor to the state government in terms of mobility.
The state meaning Baja California?
Baja California, yes, the state government.
Do you have any experience working with the Dutch?
No, up to this point, I hadn't had any experience working with the Dutch.
What did you think of today's session?
It was a good session. I think the exchange between the different points of view, the Dutch point of view, the point of view of the people from San Diego, and our point of view from Tijuana, which I don't want to generalize as being representative of all Mexico, but we do have many traits that are only seen in Latin America or even other countries of the global south.
Like what, when you say?
Well, one that is very important for us as urban planners is how we have to deal with informality in many areas of our urban growth. Informality in housing. Up to the 2000s, Mexican cities grew up to 70% in informal means. They
What do you mean by informal?
Informal means that people did not comply with regulation when they built their housing, or when they acquired land and built their housing. So that we have to really understand informal markets. Even if we think they are unorganized expansions of people who really need housing and can't provide and can't really afford housing by any other means, there are these markets that organize at the limits of regulation.
So then is this informal market a way of lowering the cost of housing?
It's a way of solving a housing situation that the government cannot really make happen. For example, if the government asks for for there to be for a housing development to have certain traits, to have proper outdoor spaces, proper materials for housing. And so the housing becomes so expensive in our societies that people from the lower incomes can't afford it. And also, when you have large percentages of these families in the informal employment, they can't access financing for housing, and
they paid in cash, so there's no
way they can access such a high cost commodity like a home by their own means. So what they do is they buy land that can't go into the market because maybe it's not fully regulated, or as it happened in the 1980s or 1970s, that this was ejido land or communal land. So it was a way of incorporating this communal land into that couldn't be sold.
Okay, so a lot of the growth that has happened in your state has happened this way.
50% of growth 50%. In Tijuana, at least 50% happened this way up to the 2000s.
Wow. Does that then tell government officials something that something needs to be done, or?
Well, that told the government officials that they had to change. They had to change certain things. So what they did was they came up with a series of market incentives to grant all these workers, or mostly formal workers, access to financing. And the other part of these policies granted house builders a series of incentives, such as also financing, but also the facility to get permits to build. And it really incentivized the growth of a formal housing market.
Okay. What did you find most interesting about today's session?
What I found most interesting about today's session was that we have different points of view of how to address certain issues. However, the commonalities are the same. We all want to better our quality of life. We all want cleaner air, cleaner water. We all want people to have better lives, maybe through more efficient ways of traveling, such as more efficient public transportation, or maybe alternative transportation that is non-carbon, like active mobility, like a bicycle. But we have different. Our cities are built differently, and we have different policies, but we all can agree that we face some of the same challenges with our decision makers, and that we need to confront these challenges with data-driven policy.
Did you hear an example of a common challenge that Tijuana, San Diego, and cities in the Netherlands deal with?
Well, in mobility, it's very common that people who drive cars don't want to leave their cars.
It's hard.
We love our cars, and this is something that is true in San Diego and Tijuana. And I know that the Netherlands has a high usage of bicycles.
Oh yeah. Have you ever seen a video of?
Yes, I have.
It's crazy.
Yes. But still, mobility issues are very divisive.
Because people don't want to leave their cars.
Because people don't want to leave their cars. Because people don't want public transportation to go maybe to the wealthier neighborhoods, or they don't want them to change their neighborhoods. So that's how they become divisive, especially in contexts like in Mexico, where there's such a polarized socioeconomic population. or even here in the United States.
How you've already said that it's very difficult to represent the opinion of all Mexican people, of course.
Yes.
It's hard for anybody. How are bikes seen, though, among people in Mexico? Are they seen as not a reasonable form of transportation? I would say for Americans, the bikes are probably seen as recreational.
Yes.
Not,
I know.
whereas in the Netherlands, they take the bike everywhere.
I'm a bike rider.
Okay.
And I've tried to use a bike for transportation in Tijuana. I am a bike rider here in San Diego. And what I can tell you of my experience is that I'm always worried about my safety. I'm always worried of a driver running me over because the car has so much priority.
And they're not separate bike lanes here most of the time.
And there are more there are more bike lanes here in San Diego than they are in Tijuana. In Tijuana, there's just one bike lane which is cut in many different intersections, and there is very little enforcement of automobile regulation.
I think here we always think in the U.S. anyway, we always think of the car first. Even if law says that a bike can use the whole lane.
Yes.
That's the way it is in the D.C. area. In Maryland, I live in Maryland. The bike can use the whole lane, but drivers don't think that at all.
Exactly.
And that's a hard thing to overcome. And I don't know the answer to it. The climate has a lot to do with it, though. A temperate climate can help.
We have a temperate climate.
And the Netherlands doesn't. It's cold and rainy.
And it doesn't rain. It rarely rains. And you would think it's an ideal climate to use a bike.
Yeah.
However, it's difficult. It is difficult because it's...
The perception of it isn't...
It's maybe it is we would have to really go deep into seeing what are the issues. It's not something I have studied, but it is in Tijuana. It's difficult because you have a lot of hills, and so it might be challenging for people who maybe do not engage in physical activity too often to go up those hills.
Yeah.
Maybe the roads are too narrow when you go into different neighborhoods because they were informal settlements, and the roads are really narrow and might only fit 2 cars, one each way. And
not great for cycling.
Not great for cycling. And even in those neighborhoods where you can have or you do have active cyclers, there's this neighborhood near the beach called Playas de Tijuana. They have different groups that go out cycling. A couple of years ago, one colleague from my university had a fatal accident, and nothing is done after that. So there are no consequences.
There's no investigation or
It's very limited. So it's very difficult to feel that you can do it in a safe environment, or that you can be protected in a certain way. Even if you have the bike lane, it could be used by a car.
Right. Yeah. Understood.
And so it is difficult. In those conditions, it is difficult. In Mexico City, they have had a successful bike program with eco bikes, which is a rented bike system, and the bikes are all over the city, and well, not all over the city. They're in a very centralized area where you might be able to arrive from your origin to a certain destination rather easily. And they have been successful. They have had accidents, but not in a big extent. And it's a very safe way to travel. And that could be an option in cities like Tijuana to use in short distances. And those are things that are being explored by the government agencies.
Mm-hmm.
And but mostly since those are privately run programs, they're public-private,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's where it gets tricky because they have to be subsidized, and then that's where the decision kind of stalls.
The subsidies.
Yes.
Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining me, Dinorah, and best of luck to you in your efforts to improve mobility in Tijuana.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, that was Dr. Dinorah Gonzalez. Thank you again for joining me, Dr. Gonzalez. Now, for the story about this fourth interview. I did interview Jeremy Bloom of Circulate San Diego from the deck of the Maritime Museum. But when I started to edit the file, well, it became corrupt, or I did something I shouldn't have. I wish I knew what I did, so I won't do it again, but I have no idea. So Jeremy was kind enough to take a few more minutes of his time to re-record the interview with me. I talked with him over Zoom. I'm in Washington, D.C., he's in San Diego, but the gist of our conversation remains the same. Let's hear what he has to say. Thank you for joining me, Jeremy.
Yes, thank you for having us.
And I should say this is actually the second time we've talked because we were there that night and we did have a conversation, and my technical expertise must be not up to snuff because I don't know what happened to the file. I lost it somehow. So thank you for taking the time to talk with me again today. So let's jump right into it. What's your expertise and what brought you to Urban Dialogues San Diego-Tijuana?
Sure. So Circulate San Diego, we're a nonprofit based in San Diego, and we work in the transit, housing, and safe street space. So we work to make San Diego a better place to live, work, and move around. And we were excited to welcome the delegation to San Diego to show our infrastructure and what's working well, and also places that we need to improve.
Okay. Among those, I understand they took a tour of San Diego. What were some of the highlights?
Yes, we went to a few different areas. We went to a new arena, our new sporting event space that's at the SDSU, San Diego State University campus, which will also be a place to live and work. So there'll be housing on site as well as a job center. And then we also went up to University of San Diego, California, San Diego, UCSD, which is actually one of our region's biggest job centers and also has an extension of the trolley line. So we extended the trolley line from downtown up to UCSD.
I thought it was neat to see a trolley in San Diego. We don't have them in D.C. Baltimore has a light rail that's kind of similar that goes to Camden Yards, the Baltimore Orioles Stadium.
Yeah, the blue line, it runs from the border, runs from Tijuana, right in San Ysidro, all the way up to UCSD. The blue line is actually the most frequented light rail trolley line in the nation.
Wow. How far is that, mile-wise? Roughly, even if
it's like a 45-minute drive.
45-minute drive, okay.
Yeah.
I think
in the West Coast, we don't technically usually use miles. We use how long it will take.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that because traffic can be
right.
so unpredictable where maybe it'll take you 10 minutes to go a mile?
Yeah, exactly.
We have some of that out here too. Our Beltway 495 and the main highway 270 can be can get pretty congested. So do you have experience working with the Dutch?
No, I don't actually. So it was great to meet folks and hear about kind of the evolution of safe streets and biking in the Netherlands over the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah, so what did you find most interesting about your conversations with Dutch people during the dialogues or during the touring around?
So one of the things that I took away most was the idea of starting small. They had a lot of pilot programs, it seemed, in a lot of these cities to kind of convince the population that they could ditch their car and get onto bikes and improve their neighborhood. And then once they kind of took those kind of prototype kind of demonstration projects, were then able to expand and take them to another level. I feel like we're kind of at the cusp of that in San Diego, that we're starting to kind of look at demonstration projects as a way to convince people that this will make their neighborhood better. Car culture is obviously very ingrained in San Diego.
Yeah, all of America, I would say, yeah.
Certainly, but I mean, we have to remember that San Diego was basically founded like as the car was coming into fruition. So, our roads kind of grew up around, the neighborhoods grew up around roads, not the other way around. And so it's definitely a challenge here.
Are there a lot of cyclists out there?
There is. It's growing. We have about 1,800 miles of bike lanes in San Diego. That's mixed. Some of that's sharrows to protected bike lanes, but it's certainly growing. We see kind of from the data, especially kind of in the post-pandemic, during the pandemic, a lot of people bought bikes. A lot of people bought e-bikes, and so it is growing. But that's also kind of coming with its own challenges. Now there's a lot more people using our streets, walkers, bikers, and motorists, and so it's creating a lot of tension. And so we have to kind of lean into that and figure out ways to make sure that everyone has the ability to move around our community safely.
Yeah. What's the terrain like there? Is it largely flat? When I think of West Coast, I always think of mountains, and San Francisco is one of the first things that comes to mind. And I see this hill that I think, oh my goodness, how are you going to bike up that? How is the terrain of San Diego?
So yeah, we are a canyon city. The city kind of grew up around canyons, and so there's a lot of hills and valleys. It's one of the reasons I think, when e-bikes have been introduced and are growing in popularity, is because it helps people kind of get from point A to point B through some of the terrain, the ups and downs. But we also, our core of our city is definitely bikeable even with non-e-bikes, so it's certainly possible, and people do it.
And the temperature is pretty nice year round. Is that right? And it was certainly last week when I was there, late February. I didn't have to wear a jacket around. I mean, it was.
We have a couple weeks of cold and a couple weeks of hot.
Now, what's your definition of cold?
Anything below 70 degrees, anything over 90.
Between 70 and 90, huh? So over 90 is hot. Under 70.
So we're temperate climates. We get precipitation, but not too badly. It's a great place to bike and be outside. It's why a lot of people move here.
It certainly takes away one of the hurdles for some areas. DC, the Mid-Atlantic region, the humidity can be outrageous. Whereas if you biked a mile to work, you'd be sweating. And it could also be so cold that you wouldn't want to bear any skin. I mean, you almost want to wear a ski mask, a full ski mask some days. It's not all the time, but it's enough that could definitely discourage some people from biking more. What did you find most interesting about the Urban Dialogues?
I think for me, again, it was just building community and connection with folks who are like-minded. We have similar visions and ideas of what we want to see our communities look like. Be it in the Netherlands, be it in Tijuana or in San Diego, we all want to live in communities that are healthy, that are safe, that are we can get around quickly and get to places we want to go, but don't have adverse effects on our environment. And it's we can come from different cultures and have maybe different solutions to it, but we all kind of want to have our communities to be that way. And so I think, to me, it's figuring out how to do that, and seeing, obviously success stories from the Netherlands, or even challenges that Tijuana is facing now with their own transportation issues. We can all work together to find solutions. Is
there a lot of similarities between Tijuana and San Diego then?
Well, from the folks that I talk to, it really isn't. There's different economic tensions. But there are similarities. I mean, they're having a housing crisis just like we are in San Diego. I mean, rents and housing prices are going up, and it's same in Tijuana, primarily because San Diegans are moving into Tijuana to live. So the similar tensions, but I do think for them, they're still kind of figuring out infrastructure and safe streets and ways to move around. I mean, they're a car culture too, so they have a similar stresses.
I walked I wasn't able to go to Tijuana, but I spent quite a bit of time those 2 days walking around San Diego, and at least the downtown area, near the ballpark. I'm a ball fan. I'm a baseball fan, so anytime I go near a ballpark, I at least want to go outside and take some photos and send them to my wife and son, who are baseball fans as well. It's a very nice city. It was incredibly walkable.
And that stadium, the ballpark, is actually a real success story for downtown. I mean, almost all of that development around the ballpark all came about after the ballpark was created.
Yeah.
And they really did invest a lot in creating like a walkable neighborhood and community when they came in. You know, a lot of other stadiums in the United States, you'll notice, are just surrounded by parking lots.
Yeah.
And the Padres Stadium isn't. Petco Park. It has a lot of housing, job centers. And more to come. There's a bunch of new housing coming into that neighborhood. So it is a success story in kind of urban planning.
Yeah, I didn't, when I went to my hotel, I didn't realize how close I was to Petco. I mean, it took me 5 minutes to walk there, and I wouldn't have known it. So certainly that is a decent...
And two of the trolley lines do go to Petco, and some of the highest ridership days are during
bar games. Yeah, I can imagine. We'll go to the Baltimore Orioles games maybe 2, 3, 4 times a year, and we live far enough away that the trolley, the light rail as we call it here, wasn't made to bring people from where I live into it. So we have to drive, but it's right off of 95, and 9 times out of 10 leaving, we're on. There could be this crush of people leaving, but we're on the road within 10 minutes and moving. So it's a real key to downtown areas. So do you see follow-up for you all with Urban Dialogues?
Yeah, there's a number of folks I met that were part of the delegation that were Dutch, but they lived in the United States, in San Francisco and LA. And I've already made some connections on LinkedIn, areas that I think we can, whatever the companies they worked with, we could find partnerships. And then there was a few folks from San Diego that I hadn't met before. We talked about some of the things we were talking about are certainly conversations we want to continue. And the nice thing about the dialogue, I don't think this has been mentioned, but a number of city officials and county officials were also involved from our regional planning groups, SANDAG and the city of San Diego. And I think it's good to have these government officials hearing stories from other regions and other areas of things that we can do here in San Diego, that sometimes it's easy to be insular and just think about our own San Diego culture and kind of perpetuating that. But I think hearing stories and dialogue from other folks will open them to creative solutions.
Yeah, and sometimes you might get an idea of something that worked elsewhere that maybe it's not a copy and paste idea to your city, but it might prompt another idea. And certainly I think that's part of the idea behind dialogues, is to begin talking with one another, because that's where the solutions start. It's sort of planting those seeds and making it grow. Exactly. Well, thank you again, Jeremy, for joining me for the second time. It's always a pleasure talking with folks from around the country to get the different perspectives. And best of luck to you to improve sustainability and mobility in San Diego. Maybe the next time I go out there, I'll see a stream of bicyclists running, going to work, kind of like in the Netherlands.
That's our vision for sure. Thank you.
Well, thank you again, Jeremy, for taking the time out to recreate that interview. Well, that's it for this episode of Five Vragen. Thank you for tuning in. Please tell us what you think in the comments below. And be sure to click on the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode or the other videos we post on our YouTube channel. I'll be back behind the microphone next month with another member of the Dutch Diplomatic Network in the United States. Until then, you can keep up with our work on any of our social media channels: Facebook, X, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Just search for NL in the USA, and you can stay up to date on how the United States and the Netherlands have a partnership that works.